How much more of this can we take? How many more pubs do we need to see close?
The rising costs of running a hospitality business are slowly becoming completely out of control. You've got VAT at 20%, you've got an increasing energy costs, increasing costs of food and drink, NI on top of increasing minimum wages.
How many more private schools do we need to see go under? How many more hair salons and pharmacies and other businesses do we have to watch go belly up? Or what about farmers selling land or just giving up because they can't make impending inheritance tax payments? All of this putting our food security at risk. And that's before we even mention illegal migration, which they appear to have all but forgotten about right now. In an odd way, Keir Starmer is probably thankful to Donald Trump and his trade intervention for moving our eyes away from his party's woeful mismanagement of absolutely everything. How much more of this can we honestly take? Forget fixing the foundations. This government have decimated them. They continue to tell us they are clearing up the mess left by the previous administration. In my view, they're making more of a mess. But will they listen? After an estimated 13 U-turns, Keir Starmer's government must be thankful for the distraction of international politics. That way they don't have to address problems at home, many of which they've created. So I wanted to make sure that we don't lose sight of the reality the British people are facing every day. Despite Brexit, Keir Starmer chose to align us all closer to the EU instead of focusing on building the UK into a powerhouse that can trade with every nation, setting our own terms, building our own British-based industries, encouraging growth instead of self-sabotage like net zero and exercise in self-harm.
Right, brace yourselves, because what you are about to witness is nothing short of political carnage.
Hold on, because what just unfolded on live television was a relentless political takedown. Nana Akua stepped into the spotlight and tore into Keir Starmer's government with such force that Number 10 is now scrambling and Labour advisors are clearly on edge. This was not routine Westminster theatre. It was sharp, controlled outrage from someone visibly fed up with the messaging coming out of Downing Street. But before diving deeper into this decisive moment, here's something surprising. Nearly 96% of viewers watching right now have not subscribed. That is remarkable considering you are already tuned in for analysis the mainstream outlets often avoid. Subscribing costs nothing, takes only seconds, and helps keep this coverage going. Now, back to the confrontation that has sent shockwaves through Westminster and left the political establishment searching for answers.
Job that has Westminster in absolute chaos.
When Donald Trump asked NATO to send reconnaissance personnel to Greenland, Keir Starmer sent one person. Is that a serious move? Keir Starmer has absolutely no power over Donald Trump. I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump does, and this Greenland demand is likely to backfire. But Keir Starmer has behaved like a schoolboy, giving a teacher an apple.
United Kingdom. Where's the United Kingdom? Where's Russia? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
That's very nice of you here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice, and I think it's fantastic. And we have so many others, and it's just... And a document, this is... Oh, sorry about that.
Keir Starmer has been weak and ineffective. His coalition of the willing, a combination of a talking shop and a useless crop of leaders coming together to try and make it look like they're doing something, has caused no end of damage to the notion of NATO, where most who are members haven't paid their fair share, relying on the US to pick up the tab. So why would Donald Trump respect NATO if even Keir Starmer and its members are working to undermine it? Keir has allowed members of his own party, like Mayor Sadiq Khan, to openly insult a world leader. I'm amazed that Donald Trump was even able to come to the negotiating table with the UK government after all the shameful abuse hurled by them towards him. Ironically, the Labour Party are pretty thin-skinned. Instead of name-calling...
This is a straightforward discussion. Would you actually use the word fascist about a Nigel Farage-led government or not?
I guess I would just say that if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, in my experience, it usually is a duck.
I mean, what could be more fascist than ID cards, which are wide-ranging pressure, which after wide-ranging pressure, eventually they U-turned. Instead of name-calling, this should be a wake-up call. Instead of selling our sovereignty like Chagos and aligning with the ECHR, a bunch of laws created for a different time, Britain needs to take a lesson from Israel and arm up, become more self-sufficient and re-industrialise, especially our energy. And we need to end being over-reliant on any one country or bloc of nations. Of course, Donald Trump is not going to take Keir Starmer seriously. Nobody does.
Hello.
Keir Starmer has to go.
Picture this. Nana Akua sits across from a Labour advisor expecting a calm, carefully managed conversation about government wins. Maybe a few mentions of NHS progress, a handful of infrastructure talking points, everything neat and predictable. Instead, it turned into a relentless accountability test. Akua arrived prepared, not with vague criticism or party slogans, but with specific examples of how Starmer's government has fallen short for ordinary people, small businesses buckling under rising costs, farmers pushed to the edge, and public services struggling despite sweeping campaign promises. When the advisor attempted the usual pivot toward progress and responsive leadership, Akua shut it down, pointing to repeated policy reversals and contrasting statements that painted a picture of inconsistency. The advisor tried to frame it as complex governance, but the tension was obvious. Then Akua raised another sharp point, arguing that international appearances were being emphasized while domestic pressures, from business closures to growing NHS waiting lists, continued to mount. The contrast resonated instantly, and the reaction online was intense. Clips spread quickly, with viewers sharing personal experiences, business owners discussing rising bills, farmers outlining policy pressures, and healthcare staff highlighting the reality behind official figures. The moment evolved beyond a single interview into a broader expression of frustration from people who feel overlooked by political messaging. What made it more impactful was the timing, early enough in the government's tenure that expectations remain high, yet concerns are already surfacing. The advisor tried to frame the exchange as routine political disagreement, but the tone suggested something deeper: accumulated disappointment, questions about direction, and a growing demand for accountability. Akua did not just challenge policy details. She questioned the broader narrative coming from number 10, doing so with a directness that strategy alone cannot replicate. Now the focus shifts to what comes next, whether leadership can address these concerns, and how many more voices will step forward to demand clarity. The message landing across Westminster is unmistakable. People are looking for results, transparency, and follow-through, and if those expectations remain unmet, the political consequences down the road could be severe.
Honesty, and if this government cannot deliver, 2029 is going to be brutal.
Well, I'm joined now by a former Labour Special Advisor, Paul Richards. Paul, welcome to the programme. So there you have it, Keir Starmer. Of course, he needs to look at international affairs, but do you get where I'm coming from here? That this must be almost, although it's not a great distraction in terms of distracting from very local and internal politics, we're now looking internationally. And Keir Starmer doesn't really, I think, want to look at national politics in this country.
No, I don't agree with that, Nana. And I would say that, of course, the international stage is the important place for Britain to be on. And then we should be looking at rearmament of Europe. You know, we need to be looking at the Russian threat. We need to look at our alliances and be staunchly pro-NATO. But the Labour Party is also doing the things that people care about domestically too. You know, we've had good numbers this week on the NHS, waiting lists falling and faster times of the NHS. Potholes are getting fixed finally. There's a great announcement 2 days ago on Northern Rail links so people can get to work quicker. So I think under the surface of the big global events, there are local improvements going on, and they have to be taken in the round. Not everything's perfect, but some things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, but what about all the U-turns? Like, everything. I mean, look, if you're effective and efficient in government, then you'll come up with properly researched policies that are likely to be successful, instead of chucking things out there, making everything uncertain, and then having to renege when even your own backbenchers are telling you, no, we're not going to go with that.
Well, a couple of them you mentioned there, surely you would welcome. So, not going ahead with the compulsory ID cards and then
but why
also
start
putting
it?
up, and then put up the limit for the farmers' inheritance tax, which is something they demanded. So these are things that should be welcomed because I think, under the scrutiny and also campaigning as well, the policies have deemed to be not popular and not successful. So they've been rowed back on. But I mean, that is what grown-up government is all about. It's about listening and doing the thing that should work rather than just ploughing on ideologically for the sake of it. That's what we had with the Liz Truss.
Like they are with private schools.
It's listening.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is,
not ideological. That's just treating private schools as the business they are. They're businesses, and they should be treated like they're not charities. They are businesses, and they'd be treated like businesses. And lots of them closed before Labour was even in government. They do open, they do close.
Yeah, over 100 though. Look, but the problem with these U-turns, as you say, is why to change tack when you've gone the wrong way. First of all, they've gone the wrong way repeatedly. But then, let's be honest, in some cases, someone may take their life, like a farmer who, as we know, took his life, and we now know that it was because he was scared and worried about the inheritance tax proposition, which now has kind of reversed, but not fully. It needs to fully reverse, really, because even the level it's at is still a bit ridiculous. But when in making these policies, there are consequences to U-turning. And that is, it's all very well to say, oh yeah, but we eventually changed our minds. But businesses have gone under because of the expectation of something that was meant to come down the line, and then it didn't, but it's too late.
Well, I'm always careful. I always take on board the Samaritans' guidelines on discussing people who have taken their life by suicide, because you don't put motives on it without really knowing the details. And I think that's quite dangerous territory. I think most people in the industry, welcomed the fact that the rules are changing. And I think that's reasonable, particularly in the farming community. The £5 million cap is, it's a lot of money. And they're not even then paying the same rate of inheritance that you and I do. So they do get a special deal. But it is a government that's listening. But like I say, below the surface of all these rows, there is just a government competently getting on with stuff. And things like the improvements in the health service is a good example. I mean, the national minimum wage is going up. The triple lock of the pensions means pensions are going up. So there are, signs of hope there. And the growth figures were better than everyone thought this last few weeks as well. So that's another example of something just perhaps below the radar that, we will get better growth in the economy. And I think, when you look at the turmoil in the Conservatives and Generic and all the stuff this week, Labour is just sort of behind the scenes just getting on with governing. And I long for a day, Nana, where we wake up and there's just no politics in the news. You know what I mean? Just people, the government just getting on with making our lives slightly better each day, and we can all talk about Manchester United or something like that.
Yeah, but you see, unfortunately, that's not going to happen because there's too much